I exposed my cheating wife's secret at a family gathering. Don't want wine? Or is it the antibiotics for the gonorrhea from your cruise? Then, my daughter dropped a bomb I never saw coming. What happened next turned me from a trusting husband into a man who learned that, sometimes, the cruelest revenge is simply telling the truth. My name is Chaz Stone. I am 43 years old, and, until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. 20 years of marriage to Camila, a beautiful daughter named Amelia, who had just turned 16, and a business that my father started and that I turned into a multi-million-dollar operation. The Stone Automotive Group was not just our livelihood. It was our legacy, our reputation, everything we had worked for 2 generations. The first red flag should have been when Camila returned from her sister's wedding in Miami acting differently. She had always been affectionate, always greeted me with a kiss when I came home from the dealership, but suddenly she became distant, distracted, always glued to her phone. When I tried to touch her, she would pull away with some excuse about being tired or stressed about Amelia's college applications. Then there was the mysterious doctor's appointment she mentioned in passing, something about routine tests, women's health things she did not want to discuss. I did not push because, hell, I thought she deserved her privacy. What kind of husband questions his wife about every medical appointment? A smart one, apparently. The second sign was how close she had become to her sister Brenda and her husband Preston. Preston had always been a decent, quiet guy. He worked in construction management and seemed to worship the ground Brenda walked on. He had married into our family 5 years ago, and I had come to consider him a brother. We had even talked about him joining the dealership business, maybe to open a 5th branch together. But lately, family gatherings felt different. Camila would light up whenever Preston entered the room. She would find excuses to sit near him. She would laugh a little louder at his jokes, touch his arm when she spoke to him. When I mentioned it once, she rolled her eyes and accused me of being jealous and paranoid. She said I was working too much and seeing things that were not there. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was paranoid. The automotive business is ruthless, and when you are successful, everyone wants a piece of what you have built. I had been dealing with a hostile takeover attempt by a national chain for a while, fighting to keep our family business independent. The stress was getting to me, making me question everything and everyone. But then came the night that changed everything. Camila announced we were having a big family dinner at Romano's, our usual spot for celebrations. Nothing special, she said. She just wanted to get everyone together. My parents, her parents, Brenda and Preston, even my brother Jack, who rarely attended family events anymore. The whole way to the restaurant, something felt off. Camila was nervous, fidgeting with her wedding ring, checking her reflection in the mirror every few minutes. When I asked if she was okay, she snapped at me that she was fine and to focus on driving. At Romano's, she insisted on sitting across from Preston instead of next to me, as she usually did. She said she wanted to catch up with Brenda on wedding planning details. Apparently, they were helping to plan a cousin's wedding, but I noticed how her eyes constantly drifted to Preston, how she bit her lip whenever he spoke. The warning signs were all there, written in neon lights for anyone who wanted to see them. But sometimes, when you love someone, when you have built a life with that person, you choose to ignore what is right in front of your nose. You tell yourself that you are imagining things, that love conquers all, that the woman who swore to be faithful 20 years ago would never betray that promise. I was about to learn how wrong a man can be. The atmosphere at Romano's felt electric that night, like the air before a storm. Everyone was there, my parents, Camila's, Brenda, Preston, and even my brother Jacques, who had come from Chicago. The table was set for a celebration, but something felt wrong from the moment we sat down. Camila kept fidgeting with her napkin, barely touching her food. When the waiter came around offering wine, she quickly placed her hand over her glass. "No wine tonight, honey?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Camila forced a smile. "I am just not in the mood." That is when it dawned on me. My wife never refused wine at family dinners. Never. She always ordered the house red. She always made a toast to the family, but tonight was different. And suddenly, all those doctor's appointments made sense. I felt my chest tighten as the pieces fell into place. The distance, the secrecy, the mysterious medical visits. My mind raced through the possibilities until it landed on the most obvious explanation. Or maybe, I said it loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Is it because you are taking antibiotics for the gonorrhea you caught on your cruise?" The table fell silent. Forks stopped moving. Conversations died mid-sentence. My mother gasped, almost dropping her water glass. The color drained from Camila's face. Chase, what are you talking about? Do not play dumb with me, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. The mysterious illness, avoiding intimacy, all those doctor's visits you did not want to discuss. Preston shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting from me to Camila. Brenda's eyes looked confused, glancing back and forth between her sister and her husband. You have lost your mind, Camila whispered, but her voice trembled. My father cleared his throat. Son, maybe this is not the place. No, Dad, I interrupted, keeping my eyes fixed on my wife. This is exactly the place. Let us talk about honesty and family values. The waiter approached our table, likely drawn by the tension, but quickly retreated when he saw the scene. Chase, stop this right now. Camila hissed through her teeth. You are embarrassing our family. I am embarrassing our family. I laughed bitterly. That is rich coming from someone. What? Dad? Amelia interrupted, her 16-year-old voice cutting through the tension. Are you talking about Uncle Preston? The world stopped spinning. Every head at the table turned to my daughter, who sat there with big, innocent eyes, completely unaware of the nuclear bomb she had just detonated. Preston turned deathly pale. Brenda stared at her husband with growing horror. My parents looked stunned, trying to process what they had just heard. What did you say, sweetheart? I managed to ask. My voice was barely a whisper. Amelia looked around the table, suddenly realizing something was wrong. I just thought. Mom told me not to tell you that Uncle Preston came to visit when you were at the dealership because you would get upset about work stuff. The silence that followed was deafening. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of trust, 20 years of building a life together, all shattered in a single, innocent sentence from our daughter. The silence after Amelia's words stretched like a taut wire about to snap. Preston looked like he wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. Brenda stared at her husband with growing horror, the pieces of a puzzle she had never wanted to solve clicking into place. Amelia, Camila said sharply. You are confused, honey. But my daughter shook her head. No, Mom. I remember because I was homesick from school that Tuesday Uncle Preston came over. You said it was to plan Grandma's birthday party, but you were talking in your room for a long time. The color drained completely from Camila's face. Preston finally found his voice, stammering. Listen, Chase, this is not what. Shut up, I said quietly. But the words carried enough menace to silence him immediately. Do not you dare try to explain this. My father reached a hand across the table. Son, let us go outside and talk about this. No, Dad. Everyone needs to hear this. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. 20 years, Camila. 20 years of trusting you, of building a life with you. And you have been what? Sleeping with my brother-in-law behind my back. Brenda suddenly lunged at her sister across the table. You piece of trash. How could you do this to me? Preston grabbed his wife's arm. Brenda, please. She turned on him like a wildcat. Do not touch me. Do not you ever touch me again. The restaurant had fallen completely silent. Other diners stared openly as our family imploded in real time. The manager approached hesitantly, probably wondering if he should call security. How long? I demanded, my voice cutting through the chaos. Camila's eyes filled with tears. Whether they were real or calculated, I could no longer tell. Chase, please, not here. Not in front of Amelia. Answer the question. How long? Preston finally spoke, his voice barely audible. 2 years. 2 years. 2 years of lies, of family gatherings where they had sat across from Brenda and me, playing their parts perfectly while they betrayed us both. 2 years when I had defended Camila when my gut told me something was wrong. I felt something cold settle in my chest, replacing the burning rage with surgical precision. This was not just about adultery anymore. It was about the systematic destruction of 2 families, the corruption of everything I had built and believed in. Get out, I said calmly. Camila blinked. What? Get out of my restaurant, get out of my sight, and get out of my house. Both of you. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Amelia sat in the passenger seat with tears streaming down her face, apologizing over and over for causing trouble. I kept reassuring her that none of this was her fault, that sometimes adults make terrible choices and children should not have to keep their secrets. Behind us, Camila followed in her BMW, probably planning her next move, scheming how to spin this disaster in her favor. But I was already 3 steps ahead. My mind was working through the implications with the same strategic thinking that had turned Stone Auto Group into a regional powerhouse. 2 years meant this was not a momentary lapse. It was a calculated, deliberate betrayal. Every family barbecue, every holiday dinner, every time I had invited Preston over to talk business, they had been playing me for a fool. At home, I sent Amelia to her room and told her to pack a bag. "You are staying with your grandparents tonight," I explained. "Dad has some things to sort out with Mom." My 16-year-old daughter was no fool. She knew her parents' marriage had just exploded, and she was trying to process how her innocent comment had triggered an earthquake. "Are you and Mom going to get a divorce?" she asked quietly. The question hit me harder than I expected. "I do not know yet, sweetheart, but whatever happens, it will not change how much I love you." After I dropped Amelia off at my parents' house, I returned home to find Camila pacing the living room like a caged animal. She had changed out of her dinner dress into jeans and a sweater. "I am a normal mom costume. We need to talk," she said before I could say anything. "No," I replied simply. "You need to listen." Camila's eyes flashed. "You do not dictate the rules. I dictate everything now. This is my house, bought with money from my business and in my name. You want to stay here? You follow my rules." She recoiled as if I had slapped her. The woman who had been manipulating me for 2 years was suddenly facing a version of her husband she had never met. "First rule," I continued, sitting in my armchair with deliberate calm. "No more lies. I want names, dates, places. I want to know every single place you have been with him. Every single time you betrayed our marriage." "Chase, you are being irrational." "Irrational?" I laughed coldly. "I have not even started to be irrational yet." The next morning, I was at my desk by 6 a.m., but I was not reviewing sales reports or dealership inventory. Instead, I was studying bank statements, credit card bills, and phone records that my lawyer had urgently obtained overnight. When you own 4 successful car dealerships, you learn that information is power, and I intended to have all of it. What I discovered turned my stomach. The affair was not just an emotional betrayal, it was financial theft. Camila had been using our joint accounts to fund hotel stays, expensive dinners, and weekend getaways with Preston. She had even bought him a Rolex watch for his birthday with money from our business account, claiming it was a family gift for his help with marketing. But the real bombshell came when I called my old college roommate, who now worked as a private investigator. Within 2 hours, he confirmed something that made everything worse. This was not Camila's first affair. 3 years into our marriage, she had a 6-month relationship with her personal trainer. 5 years after that, it was with her boss at the marketing firm where she used to work. How did I not see this? I wondered, staring at photographs and hotel receipts that painted a picture of systematic deception spanning nearly 2 decades. My phone buzzed with a message from Brenda. "Can we meet? I found something in Preston's Things You Need to See." An hour later, we were sitting in a downtown coffee shop. We both looked like survivors of a natural disaster. Brenda's eyes were red from crying, but there was steel in her voice when she spoke. "I have been going through his computer," she said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "There are emails, Chase, hundreds of them going back 3 years." I plugged the drive into my laptop and felt my blood run cold. The emails were not just romantic correspondence. They were detailed plans. Plans to slowly siphon money from both of our families. Plans for Camila to pressure me into making Preston a partner in the dealership business. Plans to eventually run off together with whatever they could liquidate. "They have been playing the long game," I said quietly. Brenda nodded, her jaw tight. "But this is what really makes me sick. Look at this email from last month." I scrolled to the message she indicated and felt my hand clench into a fist. Camila had written to Preston about how boring and predictable I had become, about how she deserved better than being trapped in suburban mediocrity with a man who only cared about car sales. The woman I had loved for 20 years, the mother of my child, had been systematically dismantling our life while mocking everything I had built to provide for our family. "What do you want to do?" Brenda asked. I closed the laptop and looked at my sister-in-law, now my partner in seeking justice. "I want to destroy them both, legally, financially, and socially. They want to play games with our lives. We are going to teach them what real consequences are." By noon, I had 3 lawyers, a forensic accountant, and a public relations firm working for me. The advantage of running successful businesses is that you develop relationships with the best professionals in every field. When you need to wage a war, you call on the cavalry. My divorce lawyer was ruthless and brilliant. She had already filed documents to freeze all joint accounts, prevent Camila from accessing her safe deposit box, and establish temporary custody arrangements that heavily favored me. But the real stroke of genius was her recommendation to immediately remove Camila from all business accounts and insurance policies. She does not know it yet, the lawyer explained. But as of this morning, she has no access to credit cards, no health insurance, and no legal claim to the business assets. The prenuptial agreement you signed 20 years ago is ironclad. The forensic accountant had found something even more damaging. Using business funds for personal affairs was not just adultery, it was embezzlement. Every hotel room, every expensive dinner, every gift bought with company money could be prosecuted as theft. But I was not just playing defense. I was going on the offensive in ways that would hit them both where it hurt them most. Preston worked as a project manager for a large construction company. A single call to the CEO explaining that an employee was embezzling funds through fraudulent expense reports would end his career instantly. The construction industry was small and tight-knit. Once word got out that he could not be trusted, he would never work again. For Camila, the social destruction would be more elegant. She prided herself on being a pillar of the community, serving on charity boards and organizing fundraisers. My PR firm was already drafting a carefully worded statement about personal betrayals and financial improprieties that would ensure she was never welcomed in those circles again. My phone rang. Camila's name flashed on the screen. Chase Stone speaking. I answered coldly. Chase, please, we have to talk. Her voice was desperate now, probably because she discovered her credit cards were not working. No, we do not. Talk to my lawyer. Her name is Jennifer Walls of Walls & Associates. She will explain your new reality to you. You cannot just cut me off with nothing. I have rights. You had rights when you were my faithful wife. Now you are just someone who stole from my business and betrayed my trust. You will be lucky if I do not have you arrested. I hung up and turned back to my computer. There was still work to be done. The final piece of my strategy involved Amelia. My daughter needed to understand what had really happened, not the sugar-coated version Camila would try to feed her. She was 16, old enough to handle the truth about her mother's choices. That night, I sat down with Amelia at my parents' house and showed her the evidence, not the graphic details, but enough financial records and timelines to make it clear that this was not a momentary mistake. It was years of calculated betrayal. I am sorry you had to find out about this, I told her. But you deserve to know why our family is falling apart, and you deserve to know that it is not your fault. My daughter looked at the papers, then at me. What happens now, Dad? Now we rebuild, without the people who do not deserve to be part of our lives. 3 days into my systematic dismantling of Camila and Preston's lives, I received a call that changed everything. My private investigator's voice was grim as he delivered the news that made my blood run cold. Chase, you need to sit down for this. I have been digging deeper into Preston's background, and there is something you need to know about your daughter. My heart stopped. What about Amelia? The timeline does not add up. I have obtained the medical records legally through the proper channels. Amelia was born in March 2008, which means she was conceived in June 2007. According to your credit card records, that is when Camila took that solo trip to visit her college friend in Denver. The room started spinning. What are you saying? I am saying that Preston AES lived in Denver from 2006 to 2008. He was working construction there before he moved back here and met Brenda. The timing is too perfect to be a coincidence. I hung up and stared at the wall, trying to process what I had just learned. The daughter I had raised for 16 years, the girl I taught to drive, helped with homework, walked to school every morning, might not be biologically mine. But even as that thought hit me like a physical blow, another voice in my head rebelled. Biology does not make a father. Love does, dedication does. 16 years of late-night fevers, soccer games, and bedtime stories. That makes a father. Still, I needed to know the truth for legal reasons, if nothing else. If Preston was Amelia's biological father, it complicated everything regarding custody, inheritance, and support. The DNA test was simple. A cheek swab from Amelia during what she thought was a routine doctor's visit. Another sample from Preston obtained from a coffee cup my investigator retrieved from his workplace. The wait was torture. In the meantime, Camila had been trying to contact me constantly. Desperate voicemails about needing to explain everything and fix things for Amelia's sake. She had even shown up at the dealership, causing a scene that required security to escort her out. When the DNA results arrived, I opened the envelope with slightly trembling hands. The words swam before my eyes. Probability of paternity 99.9%. A relief so intense flooded through me that I actually laughed out loud. Amelia was mine. No matter what else Camila had done, no matter how many lies she had told, my daughter was my daughter. But that relief quickly morphed into something harder and colder. Camila had let me believe for 16 years that there was even a possibility of doubt. She had kept the secret of that Denver trip, knowing it matched the timeline of her affair, and never said a word. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. Jennifer, I need you to add something to the divorce complaint. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, and I want the DNA test included in our custody case. The nuclear option was now on the table. Camila had escalated this beyond simple adultery to something approaching psychological warfare. It was time to respond in kind. That night, I sat Amelia down for the hardest conversation of my life. She had a right to know what her mother had done, and more importantly, she had a right to hear from me that none of it changed how I felt about her. No matter what your mother does, no matter what she says or what anyone else says, you are my daughter. Period. End of story. Amelia hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo. More than you will ever know. The next morning, news arrived that Preston Nays had been arrested. The fraudulent loan documents, combined with evidence of embezzlement from his construction company, had resulted in felony charges that could put him in prison for 5 to 10 years. Camila, meanwhile, had hired her own lawyer, a shark named Davidson who specialized in high-conflict divorces. His first move was to demand an emergency hearing regarding my alleged financial abuse and parental alienation of Amelia. The court battle was swift and decisive. My lawyer presented evidence of Camila's systematic theft from the business accounts, her fraudulent use of credit cards, and her conspiracy with Preston to commit loan fraud. The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as the evidence mounted. Mrs. Stone, the judge finally said, given the evidence of financial misconduct and the clear pattern of deceit, I am ordering supervised visitation only until these criminal matters are resolved. Camila's face went white. Supervised visitation meant she could only see Amelia in the presence of a court-appointed supervisor, and only for a few hours each week. Outside the courthouse, she confronted me one last time. You have destroyed my entire life, she said, tears streaming down her face. No, I replied calmly. You destroyed your life when you chose to betray your family. I am simply refusing to go down with you. And what about Amelia? She needs her mother. I looked at this woman I had once loved. This person who had shared my bed and my dreams for 2 decades. And I felt nothing but pity. Amelia needs a mother she can trust. You are not that person anymore. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Camila received exactly what the prenuptial agreement specified. 10% of the marital assets, no claim to the business, and limited visitation rights, contingent on her completing therapy and paying restitution for the embezzled funds. Preston was sentenced to 7 years in a federal prison. Brenda got to keep their house and filed for an annulment of the marriage, citing fraud as grounds to invalidate it completely. 3 months after that nightmare dinner at Romano's, I was in my office looking out over the car lot, thinking about second chances and new beginnings. Amelia was thriving in therapy, getting ready to apply to colleges, and had started dating a nice boy from her advanced calculus class. The phone rang. It was my lawyer with news of a business opportunity. The chance to expand Stone Auto Group into the luxury market with a new Mercedes dealership. What do you think? She asked. I smiled, feeling something I had not experienced in months. A genuine optimism about the future. I think it is time to build something new. Some people learn from their mistakes, others are made stronger by them. The betrayal that was supposed to destroy me had instead freed me from a marriage built on lies and opened doors I had never imagined possible. Camila had wanted to trade me in for a newer model. Instead, she had given me the freedom to become the man I was always meant to be. A year after that disastrous dinner at Romano's, I was standing in the showroom of my new acquisition, Stone Laxer Motors, specializing in high-end European vehicles. The Mercedes-Benz dealership had been a dream for years, but it took losing everything I thought was important to gain the focus necessary to achieve it. Amelia was walking through the gleaming showroom, admiring the latest models while telling me about her acceptance into 3 top-tier universities. At 17, she had grown into a remarkable young woman, stronger, more independent, and surprisingly wise about human nature after witnessing her mother's betrayal firsthand. "Dad, look at this one," she exclaimed, pointing to a silver convertible. "Perfect for college, do not you think?" I laughed, remembering when buying a car required family discussions and budget meetings. "We will talk about it after you choose which college you want to go to." The past year had transformed us both in ways I had not expected. Amelia had initially struggled with anger toward her mother, but therapy had helped her understand that Camila's choices reflected personal character flaws rather than any failings as a daughter. She learned to maintain boundaries while still loving the woman who gave her life. My phone vibrated with a message from Brenda. "Coffee tomorrow. I have news about the business." Brenda and I had developed an unexpected friendship, forged in shared betrayal and mutual respect. She had used her settlement money to start a marketing consultancy that was already thriving, and we began discussing a potential partnership to promote the luxury dealership. The strange truth was that Preston and Camila's betrayal had freed both Brenda and me to become better versions of ourselves. We had stopped settling for relationships based on obligation and started building lives based on genuine choice and authentic connection. "Mr. Stone," my sales manager approached with a clipboard. "The regional representative from Mercedes wants to schedule that meeting about expanding to a second location." Success tasted different now, cleaner, more purposeful. Every achievement felt earned rather than inherited or expected. The business had grown beyond my father's modest used car lot into something that would make him truly proud. That night, Amelia and I sat in our redesigned living room, working on college essays together. She wrote about resilience and learning to trust her own judgment. I reviewed business plans for expanding into luxury RV sales. "Do you ever miss how things were before?" she asked during a break from writing. I considered the question carefully. "I miss the security of thinking I could trust everyone, but I do not miss living with lies." She nodded thoughtfully. "Mom called again. Yesterday. She wants to take me to dinner next week." Amelia still maintained limited contact with Camila, who was slowly rebuilding her life after losing everything. The supervised visits had ended, but their relationship remained careful and distant. "What did you tell her?" "That I would think about it." "That is fine, sweetheart. It is your choice. Whatever you decide, I will support you." The freedom to make that statement honestly felt like the greatest victory of all. It had been 2 years since the night that changed everything. I was standing on the deck of my new lake house, watching Amelia and her boyfriend Garrett practice wakeboarding while Brenda grilled burgers for a 4th of July celebration. Life had settled into patterns I had never imagined possible during those dark months of divorce proceedings and custody battles. The business had expanded to 6 locations across 2 states. Amelia had chosen Northwestern University to study engineering and maintained a cordial but distant relationship with her mother. Most surprisingly, Brenda and I had discovered that a friendship forged in betrayal could evolve into something deeper and more genuine. "The burgers are ready," Brenda shouted, her voice carrying across the water to where I stood, contemplating how dramatically life can change when you stop accepting less than you deserve. We were not married. We were both still wary of legal entanglements after our previous experiences, but we had built something honest and direct, based on shared values rather than romantic illusions or financial convenience. Amelia hopped off the dock, soaking wet and smiling. "Dad, Garrett wants to know if you will teach him how to drive the boat tomorrow." "Sure, as long as he promises not to crash it into the dock like someone I know did last month." She laughed and grabbed a towel, looking every bit the confident young woman she had become. The trauma of discovering her mother's betrayal had shaped her, but it had not broken her. Instead, it had taught her to value authenticity over appearances and substance over charm. "Any word from your mom lately?" I asked casually. "She texted me last week. She is engaged to some guy she met at work. Apparently, he is the manager of the retail store where she works." Camila had rebuilt her life on a smaller scale, a modest apartment, a retail job, a relationship with someone who matched her diminished station. The woman who once hosted charity galas was now planning a wedding that would likely cost less than her old monthly hairdressing budget. "How do you feel about that?" I asked. Amelia shrugged. "I am glad she found someone. I hope she learned something from everything that happened." The maturity in her response reminded me that children are often more resilient than their parents give them credit for. She processed her mother's betrayal, learned from it, and moved on without harboring destructive anger or unrealistic expectations. As the sun set over the lake, casting a golden light across the water, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Preston was finishing his prison sentence and would be up for parole next year. Camila was building a new life with limited resources, but seemingly with a genuine commitment to change. And I was standing on my own property, surrounded by people who had chosen to be part of my life, rather than people who felt obligated to tolerate me. "Dad," Amelia said, interrupting my thoughts. "Brenda wants to know if you are ready to eat, or if you are just going to stand there looking philosophical all night." I laughed and walked toward the table where real relationships are built. One honest conversation, one shared meal, one genuine moment at a time. The betrayal that was supposed to destroy my family had instead taught us what family truly means. Sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you creates the space for the best thing that was waiting to occur.